Welcome to the Superstar Communicator podcast. My name is Susan Heaton-Wright, a leading impact, speaking and communications expert. My aim is to show you how to make an impact so you will be heard, listened to and respected for career success. Listen weekly to the podcast and go to our website, superstarcommunicator.com. Hi everybody, this is Susan Heaton-Wright. I want to talk to you a little bit about saying no in certain situations, because sometimes this can be quite tricky. And over the last few days, I've worked with a number of clients where this has been one of the problems, that either they're not saying no or they are struggling to say no. And what's more, I have been in a situation recently where I've been asked to do things that are way beyond what was acceptable, and I've had to say no. Now, I've got my notes here, so if I look down, it is literally because I'm looking at my notes to make sure I've got my prompts here. I think that it's even more difficult in these times because we are working from home, we're working virtually, and there is an expectation that you should work longer hours because, well, you're not having to commute into work. It's absolutely okay to add on some time. It could be that because somebody else is a senior person in the practice or the organization, why shouldn't you be working long hours too? There can even be, well, you're in your office anyway, why don't you pop in and actually have a look for this information or just finish off this piece of work? Well, do you know what? That isn't fine. And you have every right to say no in these situations because it's going above and beyond what you should be doing. Also, there are some people that say that I'm struggling. I'm going to come back to that. Absolutely, we need to look out for each other and we need to support each other. However, if they are struggling and actually they're making your life more difficult as well, nobody wins. I'm one of those people, and I'm sure that many of you are too, that we're people pleasers. And you know, I want to go above and beyond, which is absolutely right. I want to serve my clients. I want to be a good friend. I want to be a good family member. I want to be a good daughter and wife and mother. And that's absolutely fine. And certainly my close friends, they will not ask me something if they don't think that it's appropriate. However, occasionally clients and other people go above and beyond this to really go beyond my boundaries. And this is certainly something that happened with me last week. I won't go into details because I don't want to reveal anything about this particular situation, but it was a demand from somebody who had already been quite rude and curt with the email communication that I had had with this person, and it was asking something that was completely unreasonable. And so I said no. I knew that this person is struggling with their mental health at the moment. However, it was well beyond levels of reasonable behavior for me to have to do this work on top of everything else. I won't go into any more details than that, but I felt that it was quite reasonable to say no because it was an unreasonable request. There can be situations where there is emotional blackmail in this. Oh, I'm struggling with this. I won't feel better unless you do this for me. There are going to be redundancies. If you don't do this work, you might be one of those people that's top of the list to be made redundant because you're not doing the work. Well, it might well be that that is completely unreasonable and they are just trying to get some sucker to do the work, the first person that says yes. In which case, you need to take a deep breath and say no. You don't need to apologize. You don't need to explain. Don't have a tantrum, because this is the rule. People have a right to ask, and you have a right to say no. However, another thing that I would say is that you could suggest an alternative solution, but stick to your guns and you're still going to say no. Only today, I had a conversation with somebody who is really struggling to say no. She is repeatedly asked to do additional work by her manager. In her contract, she has a certain number of hours a week that she has to work, which certainly within professional services is unusual. However, since it is in the contract, it is something that should be respected. But time and time again, she is asked to do additional work, so she is doing free overtime, essentially. She's feeling very angry and frustrated by this, particularly since she is not going to be paid any more than anybody else in the office. Her productivity is already incredibly high, and she is feeling taken for granted. We actually worked on a script where she felt comfortable to say no. She felt comfortable not to say sorry and no, and felt comfortable with saying no without justifying it. However, in this particular instance, what we came up with for the script was really to say, all right, I've already got all of my hours for this week allocated to particular projects. If you want this as a priority, why don't you look at what else I'm doing and move one of those things to next week? And then that meant that the manager had to consider all of the work and whether he or she could do that. Now, I've also heard from a lot of people who are being asked to do work out of hours because they're working from home. Whether this is, well, we as managers, we're doing this, you've got to do this, we've got to keep the business going. First of all, I believe that you should be switching off your phones after hours, and you should switch off your laptops or computers so you can't check your emails. Make a real point of saying that you have certain hours that you work with. You could, if you wanted to, set up an automated response to your emails when you are out of the office. So you could switch it on at 6 p.m. If you then switch off your email, then people will be able to see that this is out of hours and that you will respond to them the next day. But also, it is quite reasonable for you to do this. And if somebody says, well, you weren't in the office, you didn't respond to this until this morning, say, these are my hours. I have to have some home time as well. Otherwise, I'm not going to be productive. So why do some people constantly ask certain people? The reason for this is that they know they can get away with it. They know those people who will say yes, or they will keep trying by asking different people, using flattery, using manipulation to get somebody to say yes. They know they can get away with it. What you need to do as an individual is to make sure that you make clear boundaries. You make it very, very clear when something is unacceptable. You make it very clear that after a certain time in the day, you don't do any more work. You have worked productively during the day, and you do not need to be working in the evening on top of that, because there has been a lot of delay with things, or other people have let them down. But this is really an opportunity for you to show your worth. Now, I do know how difficult it is to say no in certain situations. We might be fearful of our job. We might be fearful that the other person will get angry, that the other person will be manipulative, or they will start being nasty to you or disrespect you. But guess what? They will respect you far more if you set your boundaries in a very constructive way, in a very assertive, professional way. Don't go into details, don't become personal, because that is not going to do anyone any good. I also know that we need to be kind to each other in these situations, because we don't know what's going on in people's lives. And if it is that somebody is constantly asking you for things and really pushing the boundaries, perhaps you need to ask if they're okay and if they could get any independent help or support elsewhere, because you propping them up might not be the best thing long term. Also, I would say that about managers, that if there is somebody who is constantly expecting you to do additional hours on top of your existing work, I would say that there were some question marks as to how productive they were and how good they were at managing a project. I know, we all know that there are occasionally real crises with work, and we need to all jump in and solve the problem. But if this is going on time again, then there is something else that needs sorting out. And you jumping in and being the hero every time is not necessarily going to solve the problem. Thinking of their needs over yours as a priority is not going to help you, and it is not going to help them. You need to weigh up the impact on you. Are you having enough time away from the office? Are they unrealistic with their expectations? Are they just trying it on, thinking, if I ask her, it means I don't need to do it? Is it a reflection on them? But please remember that you can say no. I'm giving you permission to do this. And you need to make sure that you look after yourself, that you have time, home time, as well as your work time. Now then, this is part of a virtual workshop that I do on assertiveness. As you know, I have quite a range of virtual workshops, and I'm able to deliver them worldwide. I would be delighted to talk to you or somebody within your organization if you would like me to deliver something like this for you and your team. Remember, it's okay to say no. You've got to look after yourself as well as other people. Thanks for listening. You have been listening to the Superstar Communicator podcast. Don't forget to subscribe and review the podcast on iTunes and on apps. Please contact us if you want to discuss any topic, could suggest a topic for us to include, or a guest who could come onto the podcast. Go to superstarcommunicator.com.